Hi everyone, this is Jay, and today I'm working on a little different kind of project. I am working on something like this. Now this is a decoupaged tissue paper print on canvas, on thick canvas, and painted around. And the reason I started making these is because even though I sell my paper prints here regularly, they sell for very low prices. I live in a art market. Well, it's not really an art market. I live in a market where people don't want to spend a lot of money on art, period. I have had my originals at the booth. I have had fine art, framed prints, and what sells the best for me are the plain paper prints at the low price. And that's great to make a few dollars here and there, but I wanted to know how I could up that a little bit. And so I started decoupaging and collaging. They're interchangeable words, kind of. Decoupage is more the technique. Collage is more an art form of combining more than one thing together. Decoupage is usually used when just putting one thing on something. I started doing some furniture pieces, and I started doing some cutting boards and other wood board surfaces, and decoupaging a print onto them and then painting around them. And I started playing. I have all these canvases left, and my goal with my Art Bits series is to use things that's in my studio that I have not used, that I've had for a long time, and put them to good use. And I know from my couple-year experience here in this market, when I paint an original whole painting on a canvas, it's going to sit there because I'm not willing to take Walmart prices for my hard work and my original paintings. And so it's just going to sit. It's not going to sell. Not here where I am. If I lived somewhere else, they would probably sell to where people appreciate the fine art and want the original art. But here, that's not the case. So I do want to up my game a little bit though. So I started doing this with the prints on the canvas and the boards and things like that. And they sell. They can sell a little higher than just a plain paper print. And they don't take me as much time as it would to sit here and paint the whole original and offer it for sale. So I started printing my vintage digital images that I've created with vintage elements and things onto various papers, and I started printing my photo art prints onto various papers and applying them to other surfaces via the decoupage technique. And that's what I'm going to do in this video today, is something like this. And as I said, I print these. I'm going to set this on its easel over here, out of the way. I print these on tissue paper, and I have an inkjet printer. And you will hear everywhere, oh, you can't decoupage inkjet prints. Well, I can. I don't know if it's my printer. I don't know why. Sometimes the color may shift just a little bit. But if I'm very careful, it doesn't bleed. So, but printing on tissue paper is a challenge. So I was going to show you how I do that, how I get this ready to print. Now this is a piece of cardstock, and this is a just piece of gift wrap tissue paper. And I don't know if you can see this. If you can see that shine there, and then on this side there is no shine, I have to print on the side with no shine. I have accidentally printed on the shiny side before, and it did not work. it's smeared and whatnot. So I cut out best I could. It's very hard to cut tissue paper, by the way. I cut out a piece that's a little bigger than an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. And what I do, let me scoot my chair up here so I can do this. What I do is I fold one end over completely, tape it. This end is cut jagged because, like I said, tissue paper is not as easy to cut as it looks. And it's very tender. It's very fragile. So I have this side here that's an edge to the actual piece of paper, so it's more straight. So what I do is I take that edge, and remember the shiny side is against the cardstock. It'll print on the other side, the matte finish side. So I take one end of it like this, fold it over, and take a piece of Scotch tape. I take a pretty long piece because I don't like a lot of pieces. I tape this whole top edge here. Attach it to the tissue paper part first, pull it tight, and try to squish it down without a bunch of wrinkles. And then I get these little end parts that didn't cover. I will put one there. If it overlaps the other tape, that's fine, as long as it doesn't wrinkle up and give you a big knot there. I got a little spot right there that's bugging me, so I'm gonna tape that down a little tighter. Okay, that one edge is taped. So the other edge, I'll turn it around. I'm gonna fold it up, pull it tight as I can. It doesn't matter to me if it has some wrinkles in it when it prints, because I'm doing these to get a vintage feel, and I use paint on them and with texture, and so that will all just blend in nicely together. So on this side, I just do one piece of tape, because this part with all the tape is the part that's going to go head first into the printer. This part is going to come out the other end. It's going to be flowing by then, so it'll work fine. Then on these side pieces, and like I said, this is very hard to do. Obviously, my printer only takes 8.5 by 11. It doesn't take any wider than 8.5. So this tissue paper is wider. So I'm going to cut this as close as I can without cutting the cardstock. Now I can set the little guides that guide the paper through there. I can set it just slightly wider than the paper, so it won't be like too tight if it's a little bit big, but I don't want to cut the cardstock. So I'm trying to stay pretty straight here. So there's that piece. And it's sticking out a little bit, but that won't be a big deal, because I'm going to move the little guides that hold it. I'm going to scoot them out just a little when I do the print. And then I'm going to cut this side, trying to stay right up against the cardstock without actually cutting the cardstock. The other day I cut the cardstock, and I was so mad because I was almost done. And I thought, no, I want the cardstock to be intact. Now I got to get over this piece. And if you go a little faster, it'll do a little smoother cut. So now these edges are almost even. So what I do on them is I just take a piece of tape right here on the edge. Not a very big piece, just a little piece. And I put it halfway on the front, flip it over, and pull that tight and squish it down on that side. Now it's a little bumpy looking right there, but like I said, it will feed through there fine as long as the guides are all right. At least I hope it will. I can trim it up a little more if I need to. This one's really jagged looking. So do that again. Pull it tight, wrap it around. So this piece with the one piece of tape is the part that goes in last. So my printer feeds from the top. It's a Canon TS3122 Walmart $50 printer. Works great. I don't think they sell that version anymore. They have an upgraded number. I think it's 37 something. But I'm still using the 3122. But the way it feeds in is face down, tissue paper face down, like this, with the taped edge, the total taped edge going in first. And I stand there and kind of be ready to help it through if I need to. But I haven't had to. And so far, knock on wood, it hasn't torn up the tissue paper yet. It will sometimes print with some wrinkles. There's some wrinkles in here. It will print with some wrinkles. So this one is ready to print. So this edge is the edge, after it goes through, this edge comes out last. And I've not had any problem with it, but I don't like this sticking up as much as it is, so I'm going to just stick another piece there and stick another piece there. It just depends on the piece of paper. But when it comes out, I've got one printed over here. This is what it looks like. These are some of my vintage Parakeet prints I made, designs I made, and I made them specifically to have a vintage feel, because I'm selling in an antique market. And so they like vintage things, and they happen to love parakeets. So that's why I'm doing the parakeets on these canvases right now, on this little project. And these guys I printed yesterday, so they're nice and dry and ready to use, and they're still taped on. So I'm going to show you how I get them off of here. I'm going to put this one aside to print when I do my next one. And yeah, this one, the paper was sticking up too. And I'll just try to pull the tape if I can, because then I can just it's not wanting to pull, but I can reuse the same piece of cardstock if I don't tear it up too bad. But rather than sit there, oops, now I got that stuck on there. Rather than sit there and peel these pieces of tape, if these have been stuck on there for a day, so they're quite a bit more sticky at this point, harder to get off. When I do them, like I just did the one and got it ready, if I go print that now and take it apart really quickly after printing it, the tape will come off easier. But the longer the tape sits, the harder it is. So what I'm going to do at this point is just cut this. And I'll cut close to the image. I do not cut directly along the image because I don't use a straight line on my images when I decoupage them. I don't use a straight line. I like to tear my edges, because if I tear them, they blend in better. And these, I can just throw those away. They blend in better to add the painting around the edges instead of a straight seam line. So I've cut those two edges. I'm going to cut this one. And my printer prints with a border. It will only print borderless on photo paper. So let's see if am I still stuck? I'm still stuck up here. So I need to cut this piece. So it's always going to print with a border on mine. And And therefore, I have room to do the tape on the edges and have it not be on the image. But there we go. There is my tissue paper print ready to go. And I have this piece of paper left, and I saved these if I do cut them up because I can make some other things out of this. So I'm just going to put that aside and I'm going to put the tape aside, and I'm going to get ready to decoupage this onto a new canvas, which I have. It's the same size as the one I showed you in the beginning with the other parakeets. It's a 10 by 10. This is approximately 8 by 8. And I will tear these edges first though. So I'm going to go ahead, since I'm ready to do that. And the way I tear my edges is I get a little water on a small brush, and I just wet the edges like so. And I come right over onto the colored part of the design. Don't use too much water. But then, after I've got it wet, it will just easily pull apart and give it a torn look. And I'm not precious about it if it tears too further in a certain area, but it just peels right off, giving that nice rough edge, which will help, it'll blend in better with the paint. And let me talk about the papers when I do these. You can't even see, you can see a little bit of wrinkles in the tissue paper in there when I decoupaged it. That's okay, because I add the paint around with a sponge, which makes some texture, and I'm using tube paint and not high flow or liquid paint because I want that build up where you can feel the paint. So the wrinkles just become part of that. That's why I like to use the tube paints with these. But you can't see the torn seam that, like I've just done here. You can't see that on here because it's all stamped over with paint already. And it's blended in very nicely with the original image. Now, I have printed and decoupaged tissue paper, regular printer paper, and cardstock like this. And cardstock is the thickest. And that one is going to have the most seam showing out of all the three types of paper. And for that, I would use some heavy texture around the edges, like molding paste, and then paint it over that to help it kind of tie in and blend in good. Regular paper, I've been able to use this little sponge that I'm going to show you. I've been able to use that successfully with regular paper and hide the edges. And tissue paper, the edges are the easiest to hide, which is why I like using the tissue paper. Plus, if you're going to go full collage with something like this, the tissue papers can be layered over something else that may have a pattern, and that could show through if you wanted it to. I'm just going to wet this edge. Get this torn out and ready to go. Just go all the way to the end. And then, you know, it's fragile, so handle it with care and try to keep it out of the water you may have just gotten on the table on the main part of the image, because it will wet it down and maybe show a watermark, but that's okay. That's part of the design, the artistic design part of it. All right, now let me get this side. Oh, my brush was trying to run away. It didn't want to do any work today. And you can go in further if you want to and tear more of it. The water just helps it pull away and give a more frazzled fine edge, and it'll do this on regular paper and cardstock too. It'll help the edges be a little bit finer, and it kind of helps you keep from tearing too much. Let me get those unstuck. All right, one more edge to go, and then this one will be ready to work with. Just like that. And then I don't tear this like this, I pull it away. I'm holding it on my left with my left hand and pulling it away with the right. Now, there are people who have had trouble with their inkjet prints and decoupage where the print would run when you add either matte medium or decoupage medium to it. I have not had that problem. I have had it maybe alter the colors just a little bit, and that's why I don't pick my paint colors I'm going to use until after I've decoupaged it and after it's dry and dry to the touch, because then I know that's what the colors are going to be. Most of the time the colors stay just fine. But if you try to print with your inkjet printer on paper and you go to decoupage, apply some, I try it on a test print first. Try some decoupage or matte medium on top of it. If it smears or if it changes the colors too much, you might want to seal your print. And you can see there's various art sprays out there to help seal inkjet prints. And some people use hairspray. Now, I don't use hairspray. I don't use anything aerosol. I have a problem with chemicals, especially when they're airborne. I have a bad problem with them. So I don't use anything like that, and I just try to wing it on my own without that. But that is an option in order to be able to use your inkjet prints. Laser printer, supposedly those prints, I don't have a laser printer, but supposedly those will not budge or run or anything when using matte or decoupage medium. I'm just throwing that out there in case you've got a laser printer. Don't go buy an inkjet. Use your laser. It'll work fine. But if you've got an inkjet, you can do this. I was determined not to buy another printer to test this out and make a few things. So I just started playing with my inkjet until I found the best possible way and the best possible paper. And I was so tickled when I learned how to get it to print on the tissue paper. And you may have to do a few tests and kind of baby your printer, and you know, when you're doing the printing, maybe hold the paper and help guide it through. I don't have to on mine, but I have another printer here in the house, a different brand. And that one, first of all, I hate that printer. And it's supposed to be better than the one I've got. But as far as it taking things through, it does tend to jam. And I just don't like that one at all. But if I hand push it through, it helps it to not jam. So I don't use that one very much. So I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to check my canvas. Now, it's the same size as this one. It's pure white. I have already added 2 layers of white gesso on top for the image to go down on. It is a white canvas and it is a pre-gessoed canvas. But I have found when it comes to this kind of stuff, adding a couple layers of gesso on top, they're thin layers, they're not super thick, but adding a layer, letting it dry, then adding another layer, letting it dry, it makes it just a little smoother, but you can still see the canvas through there. But it just doesn't seem as rough to add a little gesso to start with. So I have added 2 layers and it's behind me. And I'm going to check it to see if it's dry. And if it's dry, we're going to do this. And we're going to see if I can accomplish another wonderful parakeet print. Because my people here love these parakeets. So I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I'm back. I went ahead and printed that one I showed you that I was taping up, and it printed just fine. Yes, there's some little edges sticking out, but I just made sure the guides were, you know, far enough out just so it wouldn't hang up. And I've never done printed any of the white parakeets I've made, so I thought I would try some of them. This is still wet. So this one here, I'm going to set aside. If you try to decoupage this or attach this with decoupage like, what's the name of it? Mod Podge or matte medium, which is what I'm going to use today. If you try that when it's wet, it probably would smear some of the ink. So I like to let it sit. The one I am working with today is this one, which has sat since last night when I printed it. So it's nice and dry now. So I'm going to put that other one aside, and we're going to try this one. And I've got I just use a big flat brush. Dampen it, dry it off just a little. I'm going to move the print out of the way, just so I don't accidentally get any water on it. Because I do like to give just a few little spritz of water on there, because I'm just used to doing that, because when you print on regular paper, not tissue paper, but copy paper or cardstock paper, if you go to put it down and it's in the wrong position, you can kind of tug at it and the water will help it slide to your positioning. Don't tug at the tissue paper. I tried that yesterday and I made a hole. I made a hole right there by accident, by tugging or smoothing too hard or something, and I had to cover that up. But the good thing is you can cover up a mistake. So let's see. I'm going to put a little bit of this on here, and I'm going to put the image right in the center. So I'm mainly focused on the center, but I will go even farther out than that. And I'm just going to brush it on there. Try not to get it too thick and to brush a pretty good while. This is matte medium. And it's got these thick lines in it here. I don't like that. So I kind of work with it, and we'll smooth it out over the whole canvas to help tone those lines down. And I'm praying this will work right. I don't want to tear this up. Like I said, tissue paper is very, very fragile. I'm just going over the whole canvas. Now I'm just very gently dragging it to knock down some of those lines. Okay, and then I'll put that back in the water and rinse that out. And one other thing I do like to have handy is a piece of wax paper to put on top of it once I get it on there, to help smooth it so I don't have to touch it. Because let me tell you, when this goes down, it's going to grab it and it's going to immediately start soaking through. So I tend to pull out kind of tight. I'm not tugging, but when it hits that middle there, and it's best to let it go from the middle. And I gently will go like this. Oh, it's working. I got a few bubbles in there. I don't want to push. You don't want to push too hard on a wrinkle. It will tear. Just trying to tap them down a little bit. Here's a good wrinkle right here. I do not get the wrinkles like this with the heavier papers, only with the tissue paper. And then I'll take this and then I can press on it a little more. I just use my hand, and some people will put a book under the canvas or something to give it a firmer surface, which is probably a wise idea. But working with something this small, I don't have to do that. And I think that's pretty good. And then you just pull this back up. That's pretty good. Now it seems to have darkened the yellow, which it did on the other one as well. That's what I mean about it changing the colors a little bit. But it's wet. And it will do that. I don't need to handle it. But this luckily goes with the paints I've been using for my November palette videos. I've just had to add an extra color here and there. But that's fun trying to figure out how to match colors and what I want to do. Now, is that exactly straight on there? Probably not. But by the time I get all this paint down around it, it will tie in very nicely. But I don't do any paint until I put the top layer of this stuff on. So I will let this sit with a fan blowing on it for about 30 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes. Come back and test it to see if it's dry enough. If it's not very sticky, it's dry enough. And then I will put the layer of the same matte medium across the top using my brush. And very gently, very, very gently. You do not want to scrub on these tissue papers. But it has darkened it. It's given that nice vintage look. And what I'm learning about the tissue papers is, in my case, with my ink and my printer, it does darken once applied. So, keeping that in mind, if I want something to be a specific color and not darken too much, I can lighten the image before I print it. And that way, when it does darken, it will not be quite as dark. But this darkened quite a bit to an aged vintage color, which is fine with me for what I'm doing. So I'm going to put the fan on this, and I'm going to let this dry, for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. It should be, because it's not that thick. And I'll be back. Okay, it's still a little damp, but it's dry enough to the touch. So I'm going to get my brush out. Now, for adding it to the top, I do not put the gesso right on top, because too much in one spot could soak in and really mess up the paper. So I just put a little bit in this little palette of mine here, and I will dip the brush into it pretty good. And I start at this upper corner and just gently drag it across. And I'm not pushing hard. And I'm using both sides of the brush. And I like to work pretty quickly so that it doesn't pool up in any certain area. But I have some on both sides of the brush, so I'm flipping it over and just dragging it very gently. So far, I don't really see any bleeding. So I do this till I get to the bottom, and then I'll check it. And I go all the way over the edges. And I do not want to see these lines, so I drag them out. But like I said, I'm not pressing hard. And scooping it on that brush. Flip the brush over in case I've got some on the other side. Go over the bottom edge. Now that I've done that, I can turn it and see, I see I've missed a stripe right in the middle. So I'm going to put a little bit more on the palette. You can turn it and see where the shine is, and I have a stripe right here in the middle that I missed. So I'm going to go over that and check it again to see if I've missed anything else. Yeah, I have a area right here in between them that I sort of missed. And I'm just using a very soft, flat brush. And a little bit left on here and get on his face. And it may look a little milky white, but it'll dry clear. And I have a spot right here that I missed. But by doing this and looking at the areas that don't have a glare, you can see where you might need a little more. Now, I usually only put one coat on. That's usually enough. But if you're uncomfortable with it, you could let this dry and you could come back over it with another coat. But if you do this, and you can see that you have that matte medium applied over the whole thing, there's shine over every part of it, then you'll know you're good. And the paint is going to go around the edges and actually into the image. So I'm not as concerned about the edges as I am the center. The center is where I want to make sure. I mean, I do want it over the edges, but there's going to be paint going over those edges, so that'll help further secure it. So that has to dry for about another 15 minutes. I think it was about 15 minutes was all I did. So I just have a little fan here on my desk, and I put this little fan on it and just let it dry it. There we go. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Okay. Just had to run off a door-to-door solicitor. They always say, I got 2 signs. Private property, no soliciting. They always say, we're not soliciting. We're just giving out this or giving you information. I'm telling you, I had to get a little bit snarky. But that's just the way it is. I don't like people coming and interrupting me when I'm working. I stepped outside for just a minute onto the porch, and there they were. I just need to move to a cabin in the middle of the woods in the middle of nowhere. My neighbor, she's got a big dog, so her big dog ran them off over there. And anyway, enough of that. Back to what I was doing. Are we dry? Yeah, we're good, I think. It's coated. It's still a little damp, but good enough to work with. So now it's time to pick some paint colors. I figured out how to do a nice green yesterday, which I'll try to show you. This is dried up, but that's what it was. But the green in here is a little different than that. So I'm going to have to adjust whatever I did. I don't have to match that. And I'm trying to decide if I want to integrate some of this pretty blue around the edges on this one. I don't know. I may decide on the blue later. I may not do that since I really just want to tie in with this paper and its color. I would like the green though. So we're going to figure out how to do that. But this color here is yellow oxide. This is one of my colors I have been using on my November palette, if you've seen my previous videos. I'm just going to put some little dabs of this on my palette over here. And then there's Naples Yellow, which is really pretty. So we're going to put some of that there. What else I got over here? Titan Buff, one of my favorites. I don't know how much of that I'll use, so I'm not going to put out a whole lot of that. I don't know, I may use more of that on this one. It's a little bit lighter than the other one. And I may want to brighten it up some. And then to match this color here, this coloring, I have Raw Sienna. So I'm going to put a little bit of that out there. And what else I got? Well, to match the wood of the branch, I have Raw Umber. So I'm going to put some of that out here. And some of this may be covered up quite a bit as I go along. We'll just see. I just wing it from here on out. I do have the olive green, but to get to this shade, I'd like to get to this shade of green and get some of that in there. Yesterday, I mixed the olive green with Naples Yellow and some white. But I'm thinking it might be too strong with the Naples Yellow, so I'm just going to put a little dot of that there. Maybe a little more. I might try mixing this with the Titan Buff, which has a cream color, and see what happens. I also have some titanium white here, but let me just try grabbing some of that Titan Buff, dipping into this green a little bit, and see what happens. Well, that's it's a pretty green. But it's close. I think I need a little more of the green. Maybe a little, still a little too bright. Oh, it's very close. It almost looks like it needs a touch of some kind of blue in there. Let me grab a tiny bit of cobalt blue in my jar. If you've watched my other videos, you know I like my jars. I'm just going to do it tiny. It's kind of bright. I'm going to do a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of the cobalt blue. No, that may be even too much. Just to see, because it can get pretty strong. I don't know if you can see me mixing this, but I'll hold it up here. So I've added Titan Buff, olive green, and a tiny touch of cobalt blue. Oh, that's just about done it. Right there. Get most of that off that palette. If I can. Trying to get it all together here on the palette so I can dip into it good with the sponge. Well, that's the best I'm going to do with that. We'll keep that cobalt blue there in case I need some more of it. I do have a little bit here on the palette. Now I use these little sponges, and in a previous video I said these are sponges I cut apart which I have cut apart several kinds of sponges. But then I remembered this one is not one I cut apart. This came like this. And I looked it up to see where it came from. And I got them at Walmart. There are 5 of these in a pack. They're about 1 inch in size. And they're already cut up. And they're just the right consistency, I guess. This is not wet. This is dry. But certain sponges are stiffer and they won't get squishy unless they're wet. And this one is very squishy, which is good for pouncing color on. And so I like these, but they came 5 in a pack from Walmart, and I think the brand said Hello Hobby. It was like $3.50 for 5 of them. I bought 2 packs of them. So that's where I got these at. But you may have to play with different kinds of sponges when you're doing this to see what kind of sponge you like the best. And I like to just start with the medium yellow, and I dab the sponge in it and kind of pounce it on the palette and then start working it around. And I'll go right over the edges when I do this, right over the edges of the print that's decoupaged on there. I may need some more. This is the Naples yellow. And just pouncing and extend over the top. And I'm not going to pre-mix other than the green. I'm not going to pre-mix anything on the before it gets on the canvas. The green I did. And you can see that difference between the yellow and this greenish cast in here. So I will need that green. Let's get a little Tighten Buff in there. And I just start going right over it. I'm not going to worry too much about the edges right now. But I just go over all the way around. This Naples yellow and probably the yellow oxide are going to be what I call the base color, the main base color. And I work very, very quickly. Probably want to bring in some of that raw umber down here. And I'm probably going to need some more Naples yellow. Now, if I wanted to brighten up the birds, like this white, I can take some titanium white and a little brush and just paint some white in there. And I may do that because that white did get kind of yellowish. They were kind of yellowish to start with, but not quite that yellow, but the darkening of it from the decoupage. But you can paint right over whatever subject you're using if you need to adjust hues. I mean, I do like the vintage look, but I do think they need a little bit more white, so I may take a tiny brush and do that. And my Naples yellow is already running out, and I know I'm going to need more of it, so I'm just going to go ahead and put some more out there. And I just dab it on like one edge and kind of squish it and hold it like this. And I go pretty thick. I don't worry about it being thick. I want it to be thick over these edges. Excuse me. So that's my base color. And I'm going to just dip that right in the yellow oxide and start getting some of that in there. And pouncing that right over to create a nice mix of these colors. And I do want to go over the edges with that as well. Not worried about covering every little inch, just here and there. See there, I went really over, and that's okay. I need some more on this edge back here. You know, the edges are something I usually fuss with last, but in order to visually understand what I'm doing, I do like to start going over the edges right at first as well, and have the mix of colors everywhere. This is so fun to sit here and do this. And I'll have paint all over me by the time I'm done, but that's okay. I just love painting with a sponge. A lot of my big seascapes I've painted with the skies, I use the sponge. Okay, we got a pretty good color. Goodness, color mix. But I'm definitely seeing the green cast in here. So I need to start bringing in some of this green, especially over here. So let's just dab it in the green before all that green dries up. Get that green in there. And I'm going to start here by these leaves and kind of extend that out. That's where I want it the strongest, is by those leaves. And over here, and kind of come right over the edge when you're extending something out like that. We got some green over here, but I don't want to go all the way to the edge. And now that green looks a little bit out of place there. But I do like to place things in a few different places around. So let me pick up some Naples yellow, just little tiny bits of it, and go right over top of this green where I got a little bit strong with it. And the nice thing is you can go over top as much as you want. Try to get all the little white areas have something in them. Unless I want white in there, of course. Let's see here. Let's get some Naples yellow down here, over this. The Naples yellow mixed with that green ties in pretty good with this shade. I got a little too much there. This gives it the texture too, the fun texture. Let's go back with the yellow oxide and up here a little bit. And there's no rhyme or reason to this. I'm just pouncing wherever I feel like pouncing at the time. I think I need some more of the yellow oxide on the palette, because I don't think I'll be done with that. All right. I do want to get some of the dark brown in here, especially around where the words are. Not that that makes a whole lot of difference. And where this branch is, I'd like to just tap out some of that dark brown so it extends to this side. And I'm tapping it right in with the gold and the green and everything else. And might need this elements right here with the, what is that, sienna? Raw sienna. So we'll get some of that in there. And I'm going right over it, but some of it may still show through. And let's pick up a little more dark here from the branch and kind of work it around on this corner. So this is going to be a dark corner, I've decided. And I'm going to go right off the edge onto here and onto here. Get a little yellow in there as well, and the yellow oxide. These are a good mix of vintage coloring here. This right here is a little too dark, so we're going to pick up some of the yellow oxide and work some of that in there, to soften that. A little more yellow oxide there. Maybe pick up a little more green in here. Even down here, just to add some interest. And then start working the leftover on the sponge over this way. I think I need a little more green in here. And down over the edge. Uh-oh, just stuck my finger in it. Another thing I'd highly advise, which I did not do, is to have a wet rag. I'm going with the Naples yellow over that green to tone it down a little. Is having a wet rag, a wet wipe or rag or something nearby. So if you get it on your hands or you get it on your subject, you can, oh, that's looking good. Look at that, that's pretty. If you accidentally get it on your subject, you can wipe it off because that's coated now with the matte gel. Let's get a little lighter yellow in here and off this corner. And then a little more of the green over here. And we need a little of this sienna. And if you don't want too much, you tap it off on your palette. Let's get a little of that in there too. Now let's get some more of the green on top of it. And then maybe, see how fast I'm moving? I don't want this to look like I've painted one color on it. I want there to be interest. I think I need a little lighter here, this Titan Buff. Let's work some of that in there too, because that's kind of light right there. Right in here, and maybe work some of that out this way. But the more you pounce, the more those colors will blend right on the canvas. And try to always go over the edge. That corner is looking pretty good. I got to clean this off my hands. Yeah, it's got a nice vintage look going on. I think up here, I've got this sienna here and here. I'd like to bring it in one more spot. Seems like there's a little bit right there in the design, so I'm just going to get a tiny bit of that and tap some of that in up here. I like to have something in, and get some of the yellow, in 3 places when I bring something in. If I bring it in on one place on the canvas, I like to bring it in on at least 2 other places. That helps the eye, to me, it helps the eye move around and see similarities around the whole image. How about some of this Titan Buff? Tap out some so it's not so strong. Work up here. I think I tried this a while ago and I didn't particularly like it. But I'm going to try it again now. Now that I've got some other paint there. I may like it if I bring it right on in around the bird without going over the bird. Maybe a little bit more yellow with it. I don't know, I'm not liking it. But with the yellow on top, I kind of do like it. It brightens it up, brightens up that corner a little bit. Over here, we might could get away with a little bit of green, go around, tap a little green in there, and then some yellow. Oops, way too much yellow. But that's okay, because if you want to keep your texture going around your edges of your image, that helps conceal those edges. Looking pretty good. I did get some on the bird's little tail, and I don't know if it's too late to get that off or not. I'm going to just grab a little piece of paper towel, dip it in my water, and squeeze it out. You could use a wet brush. I'm just going to try this. Not working real well. Grab a little more. Nope, he's just going to have yellow on his tail. Or I can just take my finger, tap in just a little bit of that cobalt blue, and then kind of smudge it. Smudge it around there. You don't have to use a sponge either. You could use a brush and pounce with a brush. I got dark brown here and here, a little bit there. I think I might need some over here. That's that raw umber, but I don't need that much. I think I just like to do a little bit extending off that edge. There we go. That's kind of interesting. Come around that edge. And now maybe a little bit of the green. Pounce some of that off right on top of the brown here by this corner. Kind of looks like the foliage has now extended. Let's see, I think I need some more sienna here. Maybe. Or maybe there. And then maybe pick up yellow right there. The sponge makes some really neat patterns. And then I think I need a little green coming off of this. Now, what do I not like at this point? So let's hold it up. Well, I like that all really well. Everything is covered, except for a little spot right there. And there's a little bit of a gold spot right here. I don't see any white showing through. Might need to bring in a little more sienna down here on this bottom. Coming off of this corner to tone down that brown just a little bit. And maybe even a little touch of the yellow right there over top of that. I mean, I could sit here and fuss with it all day, but the key with these is I don't want to spend a lot of time on them. So at this point, I'm going to go with whatever's left on the palette. I'm going to start going around the edges and use up paint that's there on the edges. Let's see, I got a little tight and buff there. I could kind of work some of that in. Because I want the edge, this is meant not to be framed. I don't even know if you can see this, what I'm doing. So I don't want the edges to be unfinished. Pick up a little green in there. And by pouncing them all at once, you're basically mixing colors on the canvas. which is quite fun. But I want the sides to be interesting as well as the front. And let's get a little Titan buff in there. Maybe a little more green. Maybe even a little of the dark olive on this side. No sense in wasting it, might as well integrate it. Maybe even make it come over onto the top and a little of this. You see how fast I'm moving though? I'm basically letting this paint itself. The only color I'm not using a whole lot of is the dark brown, the raw umber, but I'm gonna put some right here on this side, and a little more sienna in there with it, and a little gold on top of that. But it's best to just pick a few colors and stick with them. Let's see, I've got some Titan buff. Let's get some of that in there. Maybe pick up a little green here. I hope you can see this. Maybe even, now the dark brown maybe over here on this side. Work some of that in on this corner. A little more of this, the yellow oxide. How about a little sienna? I like to try to use all the colors on the sides at some point. I'm about out of the green. And sometimes just a little dab might add that fun bit of interest. All right, let's go to this side. Let's pick up some of that dark brown and some sienna. I know you probably can't see that. And some of the yellow oxide. I don't really have much of the green left, but I have a little, so I'm gonna dab some of that in there. A little more sienna. And I want these sides to be interesting. And a little Titan buff in there. Oh, now that made a nice pattern right there. So I don't want to do too much to that. I like what that did right there. So if you see something, you like what it did, stop pouncing. Ah, about lost it there. And let me bring a little bit more of this Titan buff up here. Just do a couple little taps. That's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna stop touching it at this point. Well, maybe not. I do have one more color, which is actually a color that's already on here that I used. The color is my jar with Naples yellow with a lot of white. I did not bring that in here, but it's really super fun color. Let's see if I can find a paper towel to wipe this palette off with, and let me get a little bit out of the jar. Just a little bit, not too much, because I don't even know how this is going to go. Maybe that's what I'm not liking about the Titan buff. I'm going to pounce out whatever's on there on the sponge and dip it in this Naples yellow that was already pre-mixed with a lot of white, and just kind of tap some of that around on this side, maybe even up here, to add some additional interest. It might be too much right there, so maybe a little of the yellow oxide mixed with on top of that. Just some little flecks of it though. Add some interest. And maybe back to a little bit more. It's kind of, I'm doing kind of a mixture here of the two. Trying to lighten up this top just a little bit. And of course my green I'm out of. What if I mix the yellow oxide with that? To tone that down just a little. Maybe over there. So it's 1, 2, couple little spots right in here. I'm running out of it now, and I have to determine whether I want to open it back up. Let me stand up and look at it. Oh, now I really like that. I do want to brighten up the heads a little bit though. So that's where I'm going to throw the sponge in the water because I'm done with the sponge. I want to find a very tiny brush in my brushes here. This is just a few of my brushes. I got a little tiny white brush there. Get that brush wet. See how it's going to behave. I think it would work. Trying to keep my arm out of it. I'm going to put a little titanium white on the palette. Just very, very little. A little tiny, tiny bit of it. I just want to see. And just in case I don't like it, I'm going to break off a piece of my trusty paper towel I've been messing with, and dip it in the water, squeeze it out, put it here off to the side. And I have this cobalt blue on the palette as well. Tiny bit of that left. I just want to see, try not to touch the sides, but I need to scoot this a little bit closer. I just want to see, let me put a little water in there, tap most of it out. To get that brush a little wetter so it'll move. I just want to see if I can brighten up those head feathers a little bit. And these feathers, and I always try to go in the direction of the feathers. That may be well, I don't know, that looks pretty good. A little much right there, so this is why I have the wet paper towel. You can kind of glaze it on there just a little bit, just to help brighten it. I'm toning it down by using the paper towel, and I may have toned it down too much. It may be a little bright. And I don't want to stick my hand on there, so I'm not getting any leverage here. I don't know. Let me stand up and look at that. Well, it does look a little better. Now, I could use a marker for this, but I'm going to actually wet the brush and see if I can glaze it with the brush. I'm trying not to get my head in it. And I have glazing medium I could use. I'm going to come right down over this try to blend that out. And I think I blended a little too much. I may have got too much over his little bands there. And that brightened it up compared to the other one. It's a little brighter. So let me try that on the other bird. I really wish I could get my hand on here. There we go. Maybe even go right over the rings on this one. Down in here a little. No, something ain't right. Right here. There. That was bugging me. So this one may be a little too bright. So I'll back some of that back off. Just tap it on there a little bit. And I may be overworking at this point. I'm just not happy with the way this one's head is coming out. There's no way I'm getting in the middle of those lines. It did brighten them up some. I'm kind of happy with how that looks. He's got a little bit of wing feather here. Could also touch that white on there just a little bit. By using it more as a glaze or a wash, it just brightens it up just a little. Uh-oh. See, this is why we have the wet paper towel. See, it's putting a glaze over the shadows on that tail. And this. I could even make a few little marks in there. Uh-oh. Well, that actually doesn't look half bad there. Maybe a little strong. You could also use a Q-tip. If you don't have a paper towel handy, but you have a Q-tip. So it's like put a little on, take a little off. That did brighten their faces up kind of nicely. So I don't want to overdo it. I do have this little bit of cobalt blue left on here, and I almost feel like dipping this in that and putting a couple little fun dots in places, but I think it might be sort of dried up. Let's get some water in it. That's pretty bright. I'll touch up his tail a little. And then I'm going to take a dry paper towel and just press down on it. Just punch some of that back up. I'm getting nitpicky now. I could put some little dots around here, but I just, at this point, I don't want to mess it up. Now I need to stand up and look at it again and see what I think. What do you think? Gosh, I hate to even try to pick it up. It's still wet. But I'm going to try. What do you think? I mean, that looks nice. Vintage. I got the green coming off of both sides and down here. I'm almost thinking this area right here needs to be a little brighter as it comes up, because it kind of looks like that area is curved in around their heads. And that would be the Naples yellow with a lot of white, and of course my sponge is in the water. So I don't know how that would do, because I like a dry sponge. Let me see if I can reach another one. You get 5 of these in a package. I'm just going to dip it right in the jar and then dip it on here. You get 5 in a package. So I bought 2 packages, so I've got 10 of these little sponges. I'm just going to gently start working some of that out of there. I just feel like it's, uh-oh, I pushed too hard. That may be too bright. This may take a mixture. So let me get some of the straight Naples yellow as soon as I locate it. And put it over here and kind of do a mix of these two. I mean, they're all Naples yellow, but one's just got a lot of white. So it may be too white. So I'm going to pounce that out really good. And kind of go over that to lighten that. Give a little interest up there. I almost think I should have had more green. I can bring this yellow, though, right down here into the green areas. Let me pick up a little more of this lighter. Bring it right down into the green. And go over that edge and then go back to the main Naples yellow to tap over that to tone that down. Yeah, I should have had and I'm just out of the green. I don't really want to mix any more up. So we're going to work with what we have. And I might have got a little too white, too light. And it's just a back and forth till you get it to look the way you want. And I like to put it like right on into the design itself if I can. If I can get it to pick up and go there. Even if I come right up to the bird like that. You can always brush it off. Even down here a little bit. Stamp some of that in there. There. Let's throw that one in there. But you could sit here and do this all day long. And what do you think? Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot better if my hands weren't all covered in paint. But so now I have 2. Uh-oh. And I just dropped water on there. So this is why you need towels. This is the one from yesterday. And this is the one from today. So I think I'm trying to hold them close. I think they will look very nice displayed together. They have the same colors in the background. And I'm real happy with these. The only thing that I may still do, got another drip of water. The only thing I may still do is when I have ordered some stencils from Stencil Girl, and they're small stencils. And I have my favorite gold, the Deco Art. I did a video on that the other day, the one I got in with the texture. And I'm dying to use it with stencils. And I'm thinking that I might add some little stencil marks on these with the gold to really give them that little punch of elegance that I want them to have. In the meantime, while I'm waiting on those stencils and to be able to do that on these, I could go ahead now and start this one. Now I know that it's going to get darker when I put it on, and it's already on the dark, kind of yellowish side. So I'm probably going to have to use a little white here. Yeah, but I'm glad I did that on here so I could see that that actually did work to do a white glaze. And I may actually, when I do this, get out my glazing medium to mix with the white and see if that'll be a little bit more successful about doing a glaze than applying the watered down titanium white. Yeah, lots of things to think about. But that's okay. That's the fun of it. I am real happy with this. I think they turned out super cute. And I think they're going to be a big hit in my booth. I wouldn't be surprised if they sell the minute I put them up there. When I put the prints up there of the parakeets, just the straight paper prints, they sold right away. But I'm a parakeet lover. I've had several throughout my life, and I would sure buy these if I was the one doing the shopping. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching my little process here with this fun project. It's a good way to spend a couple hours on a Saturday morning and to create something new. And I hope you have fun playing around with the same process with your images. So you all take care. Thanks for watching, as always. And be sure to subscribe and leave me some comments down there if you like my parakeets. You guys have a great day.